j'ai du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
As a matter of fact, this is a dark time. The pandemic is killing us, making countless sick, crush the economy for workers, keeping our kids from normal school life in too many places. And we have a president who refuses to lead us through it. He actually told us, I take no responsibility. He is more intent on tearing us apart, despite it being a time that we are desperate for unity. In this context, former President Obama took a message to Philadelphia, the place of our founding, the founding of a democracy. And he gave a grave moment, a grave message. He called out Trump by name, and Trump issued a furious thread of tweets in all caps. The question for us now is, did Trump's tweets help make Obama's case against him? Jeremy Diamond joins us now. He was tweeting in real time.
He was, and that just tells you that he was watching this speech, as he has been many others this week. But this speech, perhaps, Chris, hit home for the president more than any other, because the president and former President Obama have had this kind of ongoing relationship, a push and pull, if you will, that kind of defines this moment that we find ourselves in American history. You know, President Trump rose to power in many ways in direct contrast to former President Obama. In fact, many of the president's aides still tell me today that they believe that then President Obama's speech in 2011 at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where he mocked then businessman Donald Trump openly, was at least one of the reasons that helped push Donald Trump to run for president. So there has been this push and pull, and there is no question that President Obama gets under President Trump's skin, perhaps like no other. And what we saw from the president this evening was responding in a way that is natural to him, and that was going to Twitter, all caps, airing of grievances, and of course, airing a series of falsehoods and conspiracy theories. Let's begin with the first one here, Chris, which was this notion, the president tweeting in all caps again, he spied on my campaign and got caught. Both of those statements patently false by the president here. There is no evidence linking President Obama to surveillance or spying on President Trump's campaign, and he certainly didn't get caught because, of course, there was nothing illegal that President Obama did. Of course, the president here seems to be referring to that counterintelligence investigation that did look into the Trump campaign and connections with Russia, and as we saw just this week, of course, in the Senate Intelligence Committee's report, which is a Republican-led panel that shows that Paul Manafort, one-time President Trump's campaign chairman, was sharing internal polling data with a Russian operative. And of course, we know that Russia actively interfered in the 2016 election in order to help Donald Trump and to hurt Hillary Clinton. But as you said, Chris, ultimately the president's response tonight really just goes directly to the point that we heard not only from former President Obama, but also from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton tonight and from many of the other speakers at the DNC this entire week. Well, and that is that President Trump is not the man for the moment.
And look, you got to take the president at his own words, not just the former president, but the current president. He knows the answers to the questions that he asked. He knows he's making false assertions. He's been told. The FBI was looking at Manafort even before the campaign, and they were looking at Carter Page even before the campaign. Those are the guys that they were looking at through the FISA. And, you want to talk about unmasking, you can talk about all these procedures, but he knows the answer. He knows that any president coming out during a primary process would be unusual, not waiting until a primary is over. He knows Kamala Harris didn't call Biden a bigot, but he says it anyway. So, Jeremy, the question is, do you think this is just regular form for Trump, or are the voices around him saying, oh, boy, this is really getting to him?
Well, look, there's no question that over the last month or so, President Trump has begun to recognize how perilous his chances are for re-election. It took him longer than it took most political observers and most aides inside his own campaign. But the president is now at a point where he recognizes how difficult it will be for him to get reelected. And I also think he recognizes the power of President Obama's oratory. And that is one of the ways in which President Obama constantly gets under President Trump's skin because of the fact that he knows that he is not the same kind of orator that Obama is. He's not able to deliver one of those kinds of searing, high-minded speeches. There's no question President Trump has his skills as an orator, but they are of a completely different variety. They're much more of the rabble-rouser variety that we see of him so well on the campaign trail. But I do think to this point that President Trump's response tonight did exactly what Democrats were hoping to get out of him, which was to get a response, and to get a response that frankly plays into all of those things that the Democrats were talking about the convention here, that President Trump is not the man for the moment, that he's unfit to serve as president, and also it feeds into the problems that many Americans have had with the president. Even some of his supporters, whenever I go to the president's rallies, I wish he would tweet less. And this is the exact way that the president chooses to now respond, of course. And beyond that, of course, it's not just the tweets. It's even earlier today when we heard President Trump praising the QAnon conspiracy theory because many of his own supporters believe in that, and for solely that reason, of course. And so it does seem like as we are hearing this message from Democrats, President Trump continues to prove Democrats' case, as they see it at least, in terms of him not being fit for office. Democrats are certainly getting the contrast that they would like here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be anybody who sets up as an enemy to the institutions of our democracy that he doesn't want to shelter in one way or another if they want to support his candidacy. Jeremy, thank you very much. You know, Don, I think one of the interesting aspects of this, it's not just as simple as him taking the bait. I don't think he's tweeted anything tonight in the context of what's going on with this convention that is true. You know, I mean, usually it's, he's spinning it, he's taking his own thing, he's taking advantage with the facts, he's being a little misleading. But he's just saying things that he knows aren't true in succession.
Yeah. Well, is that really new? But tonight, there is a sense of desperation, and even beyond tonight. I think Jeremy is. You asked Jeremy the right question, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you said, is it a sign of how he feels over the, he's felt over the last few days, or at least going into this election? I was on with Anderson earlier, and Anderson asked me about this whole thing that he has with Goodyear tires. He's upset because of something they said that they couldn't.
Big company in a swing state.
In a swing state, that they couldn't wear shirts or a tire that had political jargon on it. A Make America, a MAGA hat or a MAGA shirt or something like that. And the president is calling for Goodyear's cancellation. He's supposed to be against cancel culture. He's the one, and his party and his followers are the ones who call Democrats or anyone who's not a Republican who doesn't get on the Trump train snowflakes. He is the biggest snowflake of them all. And the way he's acting now is a sign of desperation. He is desperate. He is tweeting and saying things exponentially now that aren't true. You just used to do it in rapid succession. Now it's just a machine gun fire. All things that are not true. You can go through and fact check almost anything he says, and most of it is not true. He's tweeting stuff and co-signing QAnon. What kind of world do we live in where even Republicans are saying these people it's a bunch of whack jobs, yet he is co-signing it?
If it is good for him, then it is good for all.
It is not good for him. It is good for his ego because he believes that these people support him. Therefore,
That's right.
they're going to say crazy, wacky things about people he calls Democrats and people who are not his supporters. But that's not going to change anything.
That's why he'll say the guys with the guns in Michigan who said they didn't want to wear the masks, oh, you should talk to them. But they're probably good people. They're good people on both sides.
But let me finish this.
We should keep the statues.
Let me finish this.
Go ahead.
Even his own people know he's lying. He's not expanding his base. He is desperate. Look at the polls. He's making mistakes. You do not cancel a job-giving company, a job-creating company in a swing state when you are wanting to be re-elected. You do not support conspiracy theorists. You do not support white supremacists and racists. You don't call for the cancellation of people when that is everything that is supposed to be against what you stand for. He is desperate. Trust me. And again, as the former president said, he will do anything he can, even if that means destroying this democracy to win.
It is Thursday, the 20th of August of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, what a great DNC, and boy, what a speech by Obama. Yes, well, at the top, we did have a rundown on all the corrections from the slew of hate tweets that Trump just had to tweet out during Obama's speech. He's so in his head. Oh, my God. Anyway, they have American Carnage, we have America the Beautiful, and that's what we'll be running on, and the divisions could not be more stark. Stephen Miller, when asked about the speech, called Obama the worst president ever. Well, you would expect a racist Santa Monica Goebbels like Miller, a white supremacist bigot, to say that. And it was interesting, too, because he was walking, across, the outside of the White House, going to work. And that's when the press asked him the question, what do you think of Obama's speech? I'll tell you what was weird is that if you look at the clip, his suit color is the exact same shade as the Nazi brown shirts. Makes you wonder now, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Well, do we have our work cut out for us? It's gonna... Look, we better steel ourselves, because after November 3rd, or, well, when it's decided, when it's affirmed, when we know who won, and it might take a week. The official count never ends on the election day, please. There's another gaslighting aspect from a guy who doesn't know anything about America. But from the time that he loses the election to the time that he's supposed to step down, we are going to be going through hell. And we have to steel ourselves for this, because this guy, look, he's not only a mobster, he's a monster too. He has no filter, and he'll do what he wants to do until he's not able to do it anymore. People often wonder, why is it like, why didn't the crook just give up? I mean, it's like they didn't want to go to prison, and they would do anything to keep from going to prison, even getting in a shootout with the cops. And that's exactly what Trump is doing right now. He is in a shootout with the American people, because he does not want to go to jail. Now, I have proffered that it's a little bit more serious than going to jail. I think Trump fears something considerably worse than going to jail. And we'll be talking about this during the Chef's Table part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy today. But I'm just going to give a little preface of what will be going on. Trump and Putin have been in communication a lot recently. And some people have speculated, myself included, that it might be some kind of strategy to, try to help Trump win again. And it could be that Putin, told him, look, I mean, you better do what you can to stop these mail-in ballots because I cannot game that. There are just too many counties in your nation. Putin says, I cannot get into every county. I don't have that. I have a lot of assets. I have a lot of dupes, and I have a lot of useful idiots, but I don't have enough to get into every county and game this system, which is hard to do because once somebody submits an illegal mail-in ballot, they get caught. 0.00025% of the ballots cast, mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, have been deemed fraudulent in the last 10 years. That's about 320-something out of how many hundreds of millions cast in that time. So you get caught. And when you get caught, you go to jail. And the people who've been caught, I don't know why, they're always Republicans. They always say that there's so much cheating, and they're doing it. And then there's not really that much cheating either, because they get caught. So Putin said, you got to do something. And Trump's pulling all the stops. Any means necessary. Because Putin wasn't being a friend. Putin was threatening Trump. Because there's some convenient ways to deal with issues that Vlad doesn't like. And another one of those conveniences occurred last night with Alexei Navalny. And Trump sees that today and he goes, oh my God, I better not get close to any, 5-story windows. A lot of convenient falls from 5-story windows, a lot of convenient muggings, a lot of convenient shootings, a lot of convenient heart attacks too. Let's not forget that. So Trump doesn't fear prison as much as he fears for his own life. We don't know what Vlad has on him. Is it purely just money? I think it's something considerably worse. And Vlad knows that he has power over this fool. And this fool is just so inept. I think Vlad's thinking of what convenience he can rely on. But it will be very convenient, trust me. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, the White House press secretary insisted that not allowing MAGA hats at Goodyear is like racism. Racism against whites. A satanist neo-Nazi ex-soldier was sentenced to 2.5 years in federal prison in a bomb plot to start a race war. Now, I just read another study that shows that 100% of all killings and violence, political killings in the last 2 years has been by right-wing white supremacists. Not Antifa. Let's be clear, even though they say Antifa is so dangerous. Yeah, because we're anti-fascists. And thousands of chicks have been arriving dead to Maine farmers since Trump ordered DeJoy to make the Postal Service disappear. Yeah, they used to get these chicks into these farms on a regular basis. I mean, just like clockwork, they say. And now, in just the last couple of weeks, their chicks are arriving dead to the tunes of about 5,000 a pop over all the farms in Maine. And that's just Maine. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a former state energy official directly accused former Mexican President Nieto of directing a scheme of kickbacks and embezzlement directly from the president's office. Wow, that sounds familiar. Almost like a virus that's been going around. And after speaking with reporters how the events in Belarus could be replicated in Russia, prominent anti-corruption activist and leading critic of Vladimir Putin, Alexei Navalny, was conveniently poisoned with a toxin and rushed unconscious to hospital where he remains. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon site. And do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. A few of you have, and we thank you for your generosity. For those of you out there who can, in these times of peril, if you could afford, say, how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink sent our way, we have great experience, in fact, going on 10 years of it, of stretching these dollars beyond compare, because we are quantum mechanics when we stretch these dollars. And like I said, we've been doing it for almost 10 years of continuous 24/7, 365 radio resistance broadcasting, as the founders originally intended. So we are fulfilling our civic duty because of the generosity of our current Patreons. But I got to tell you, the bills keep going up, and we could use a few more of you as Patreons. And do please do it. We need you. And I'm not kidding. I'm just laying it out there. But thank you for your generosity, and thank you for listening to Netroots Radio. We put in the effort because responsibility, duty, it's all of that. And though we kid around a lot, it's sort of like gallows humor, because we take our duty, our responsibility very seriously. And thank you for allowing us to do so. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. It's so simple. Tom takes care of that, and that's why it's so simple. He made it so. Thank you, Tom. If you would like to follow me, and you might as well, because at Justice Putnam on Twitter, because I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that out on social media, Twitter being part of that. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, iTunes, YouTube, everywhere. They're everywhere. Deezer. What is Deezer? It's a podcast platform. I just looked at the little metric thing, and Deezer is part of the downloads that come through. Who knew? All I know is they're everywhere. Everywhere. Alrighty, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, oh my. Emily Singer of the American Independent brings us this first offering here. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany defended Trump's call to boycott Goodyear tires, saying the Ohio-based company's policy to allow Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ pride apparel, but not political apparel like MAGA hats and Blue Lives Matter clothing, is an equity issue on par with racism. Well, you know, Boycott just doesn't want their employees engaging in any kind of political speech. I know that McEnany thinks that Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ. Is it supposed to be LGBTQ? Anyway, I thought it was LG. But anyway, that kind of pride apparel, that's equality issues, not equity issues. Well, she made the comments from her Wednesday news conference yesterday in which he falsely said that Goodyear failed to clarify their policy against political apparel, even though the company said in a statement that employees should, quote, refrain from workplace expressions in support of political campaigning for any candidate, end quote, not just MAGA hats. The company said that it is true, it is LGBTQ, a little bit of a spelling issue at the top, typing probably. And also Black Lives Matter issues fall under the scope of racial justice and equity issues and are thus allowed, while MAGA hats and Blue Lives Matter are political issues. However, McEnany said Blue Lives Matter is an equity issue, even though police have not had to fight for humane and equal treatment. Yeah. While both Black and LGBTQ communities have been fighting for justice and equality for decades, and I would say probably a lot longer than decades. Goodyear went on to say in their statement that they do support law enforcement, and we all do. Trump's out there lying right now, if you elect Biden and Harris, they're going to get rid of all laws. Yeah, 25 years as a prosecuting attorney. Give me a break, Trump. That's not going to fly. And I got to tell you, I didn't agree with this, but Biden did sign some funding issues for the cops so they can get a few tanks. Yeah, come on. They ought to take those tanks away, actually. That's what they mean by defund the police. Don't get rid of the police. How about, $25 billion to run NYPD? Come on. John Hanna of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. An ex-soldier described by prosecutors as a satanist and linked to a neo-Nazi group was sentenced yesterday, Wednesday, to 2.5 years in federal prison for distributing information through social media about building a bomb and making napalm. Now stop. I know there's a lot of white supremacists and neo-Nazis out there saying this guy's First Amendment speech rights were violated by this terrible, onerous prosecution. But no, yelling fire in a crowded theater, let alone blowing them up with napalm, is not protected speech, please. A federal judge rejected a request from Jarrett Williams Smith's attorney for a lenient sentence of 15 months in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. Federal law called for a sentence of up to 20 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. But sentencing guidelines said the presumed punishment for a first-time offender like Smith was 2.5 years to a little over 3 years in prison. U.S. District Judge Daniel Crabtree also ordered the 3 years of supervised probation for Smith after his release from prison. The judge said he was surprised that federal sentencing guidelines called for such a low prison sentence for troubling and serious criminal behavior, adding that Smith wanted to start a race war and shared on social media multi-step plans to create chaos. Sounds familiar. We're getting that from the Oval Office right now. His planned actions, if executed, would have endangered countless members of the public, Judge Crabtree said from the bench. In seeking the lighter sentence, Smith's attorney said that because of a cleft lip and palate, Smith had endured a lifetime of victimization, isolation, and trauma, and it just drove him to be a Nazi. And that led him to become involved with online extremist groups. Yeah, he just had to become a Nazi. He was so victimized. All victims, when they feel victimized, especially when white, want to get back and then they become Nazis. The Anti-Defamation League has said Smith is associated with the neo-Nazi Krieg division. Krieg. It looks like the fire war division, which it says advocates a race war and promotes some of the most extreme views of the white supremacist movement. Smith, age 24, was a private first class stationed at Fort Riley when he was arrested last year. Well, that's how he became an ex-soldier. He was already a soldier when he was busted. Let's be clear about that now, too. Federal public defender Rich Federico said Smith lacked the basic knowledge to actually build explosive devices and was often just regurgitating what he'd seen online. Sure, you're in the military and no one told you how to make napalm? Please. Prosecutors argue that Smith admitting to providing information about making explosives to an undercover agent in September of 2019 and that FBI bomb technicians determined that his recipes were viable. He pleaded guilty in February to 2 felony charges of distributing explosive information and admitted that he intended for it to be used. Prosecutors said that Smith planned to overthrow the government with attacking a news organization as the first step. They said he told an FBI agent that he distributed explosives information for, quote, the glory of a satanist religion, end quote, though they provided few other details other than saying that Smith liked black metal music designed to attract people to Satan. Look, you don't need to make the neo-Nazi thing look worse by adding the Satan BS to it. Please. Neo-Nazis are evil just unto themselves. Federal investigators have said Smith had encrypted communications with a Missouri man who this year planned to bomb a Kansas City area hospital because he was distressed by the government's response to the coronavirus pandemic. That man killed himself in March during a firefight with FBI agents as they served an arrest warrant. Smith admitted in his plea agreement that he spoke to others about his desire to travel to Ukraine to fight with a violent far-right paramilitary group. And he was previously stationed at Fort Bliss, Texas, and he was discharged from the military after pleading guilty to the 2 charges. Anonymous worker bees at the AP bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. At least 4,800 chicks shipped to Maine farmers through the U.S. Postal Service have arrived dead in recent weeks since rapid cuts hit the federal mail carrier's operations, said U.S. Representative Chelly Pingree. Pingree, a Maine Democrat, is raising the issue of the dead chicks and the losses farms are facing in a letter to Postmaster General Louis DeJoy and U.S. Department of Ag Commissioner Sonny Perdue. Pauline Henderson, who owns Pine Tree Poultry in New Sharon, Maine, told the newspaper, the Portland Press-Herald, she was shocked last week when all of the 800 chicks sent to her from a hatchery in Pennsylvania were dead. Usually they arrive every 3 weeks like clockwork, she said, and out of 100 birds you might have 1 or 2 that die in shipping. She told the newspaper thousands of birds that moved through the Postal Service's processing center in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, were also dead, impacting several farms in Maine and New Hampshire. The Postal Service's media contact for the eastern U.S. did not immediately return a Press Herald reporter's message. It's one more of the consequences of this disorganization, this sort of chaos they've created at the post office, and nobody thought through when they were thinking of slowing down the mail, Pingree said, adding that her office has received dozens of complaints from farmers and others trying to raise a small flock of chickens in the backyard. And you can imagine, you have young kids and they're all getting excited about having a backyard flock, and you go to the post office, and that's what you find: dead baby chicks. Pingree said she wasn't sure if Purdue is aware of how the changes in the Postal Service are impacting smaller poultry farmers in the U.S. This is a system that's always worked before and has worked very well until these changes started being made. DeJoy, a Republican donor who's the first postmaster general who did not come from the ranks of the Postal Service, took control of the agency in June and has since swiftly engineered cuts and operational changes that are disrupting mail delivery operations, because when you're deconstructing the administrative state, there's just some collateral damage that just has to be made. Okay, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Seasons Past. That's the non-accidental title of a first-time novel written by our protagonist Kate Conklin in the new movie I Used to Go Here. Kate is 35 years old. Most of her friends are pregnant, while her fiancé has just dumped her. Her baby's the aforementioned book, to which we are introduced during a phone call from her publisher that we hear as she walks through the streets of Chicago. That's not going too well either. Sales are low and her book tour's been canceled. Kate, Community's Jillian Jacobs, is seeing her life come apart just as her old writing professor and former crush from college, David, played by Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords, calls to invite her back to campus for a reading and Q&A. Needing the ego boost, she's there, picked up by a student guide and driver who's just the first in an array of wonderfully eccentric supporting characters. Most of these are students now inhabiting her old digs who initially point out to her that they were in kindergarten when she lived there. They accept her as a real writer, but are just as accepting when she regresses into one of them, even becoming involved in a plot to expose a professor, no less than her benefactor Dave, as the horn dog that he apparently is. The details in this one feel right, and it turns out the film is at least somewhat autobiographical, as director Chris Ray, formerly Chris Swanberg, hails from Chicago, has done the breakup thing and attended SIU in Carbondale, Illinois, where the film is set. I Used to Go Here occupies the same space as some Apatow pictures, but with enough nuance and subtlety for issues of maturity, self-acceptance, and sincerity to shine through to nicely darken this low-key comedy. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Here on Earth, your best bet for seeing lava is to go to a volcano. But out in space, there are entire exoplanets made of the stuff. These so-called lava worlds orbit so close to their stars that their surface temperatures can melt rock. Which might sound familiar, says space technologist Mikel Paiusalo of the University of Tartu in Estonia.
So, like, for example, from science fictions, we know from Star Wars, Episode 3, Mustafar Planet.
Kind of like that, but, without the lightsabers. Scientists had noticed that some of these real lava worlds were extraordinarily bright and reflective. But why?
There was idea that maybe this comes from the fact that lava itself is basically a liquid, and a smooth surface can reflect, like the surface of water, for example.
So Payusalo and his colleagues did what anyone would do to test that idea. They made their own lava. Here's MIT's Zara Essek, who led the team.
When we removed the lava from the furnace, you could instantly feel the heat wash over you. Even from 6 feet away, it felt like you were standing right on the edge of a roaring bonfire. The crucible, which was the container holding the lava, was glowing so brightly it made my eyes water. It was an incredible experience.
After producing the lava, the researchers calculated its reflectivity in both the molten and solid states, and they realized that lava wasn't reflective enough to explain these bright exoplanets they were seeing. Instead, Essex says, perhaps these planets could be remarkable in yet another way.
We think that lava planets could have exotic reflective atmospheres consisting of silica, which is the main component of rocks, and metals like sodium or potassium that could reflect starlight and make the planets appear very bright.
The work appears in the Astrophysical Journal. And if lava worlds feel very far away and perhaps irrelevant, Essek brought up the fact that Earth, too, was once covered in sloshing lava early in its formation. So by studying planets around distant stars, we might better understand the history of our own. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The discovery of penicillin in 1928 by Alexander Fleming was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century. It's hard to imagine a world before the development of what many consider to be miracle drugs. However, just 90 years ago, antibiotics weren't available. Thanks to antibiotics, some common illnesses such as strep throat are now easily treated, whereas in the past they often led to serious complications. Antibiotics serve an important role in keeping you and your loved ones healthy, but it's important to remember that antibiotics only treat bacterial infections. Most common infections such as colds, flu, most sore throats, bronchitis, and many sinus and ear infections are caused by viruses and do not respond to antibiotic treatment. These infections can be overcome by simply treating the symptoms and letting the illness run its course. Unfortunately, antibiotics have often been overused, resulting in decreased effectiveness and an increase in antibiotic-resistant diseases. Antibiotic resistance, or the increased ability of bacteria to survive in the presence of antibiotics, has become a major public health threat that we all need to help fight. When a person takes antibiotics, they are at risk for possibly having a bad reaction to these drugs. Some side effects can be quite serious, or even life-threatening in the case of an allergic reaction or severe diarrhea. This is why it is very important to only use antibiotics when they are absolutely needed, and not for viral infections. Talk to your healthcare professional about the best treatment for your illness. If it is caused by a virus, follow his or her recommendation for treating the symptoms. Learn more about appropriate antibiotic use and how to feel better when you don't need an antibiotic by visiting CDC's Get Smart, Know When Antibiotics Work website at cdc.gov/getsmart/community.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, Ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Donald Trump's claims that Kamala Harris is ineligible to run for vice president or president because her parents were immigrants is false, racist, and dangerous. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. False because the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, in relevant part, unambiguously provides that all persons born in the United States are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. Kamala Harris was born in 1964 in California, and therefore is a natural-born citizen of the United States. The daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants who had achieved their doctorates the previous year from the University of California, Berkeley, and were working as academics at the time of her birth. The immigration status of her parents, which conform to all laws, by the way, doesn't matter a whit. Racist because this is the 2020 version of Donald Trump's repeated birthism claims that President Obama was not a United States citizen. And dangerous because Trump's debunked theory has spread like wildfire across social media, even though, as Harvard Law School constitutional law professor Lawrence Tribe puts it, the theory about Kamala Harris not being eligible to be vice president or president is idiotic and total BS. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
As horrible as the COVID-19 crisis is, it has brought out the best in the American people. The selflessness of frontline nurses and doctors, for example. Yet, it has also amplified one of the worst character flaws in our society, namely the me-first greed of corporate chieftains. Just last August, we were told that a new, more democratic corporate ethic was emerging. The CEOs of 181 big-name giants signed a public pledge that henceforth they would run their corporations not solely to maximize shareholder profits, but also to benefit workers, communities, and other economic stakeholders. Then, only 5 months later, boom, the pandemic hit. Profits dropped, and the new magnanimous spirit of togetherness vanished from these corporate boardrooms. Immediately, masses of their workers were being punted out the door. Health benefits were coldly terminated just when needed most, and the pledge to serve the common good went into the shredder. Well, retorted such pledge signers as Arne Sorensen, CEO of the Marriott Hotel Empire, revenues are drying up, so all promises are negated. In a March video message dispatching most of Marriott's employees, Sorensen cluelessly added this insult to their injury: I wish you good health and a sense of optimism. A couple of weeks later, workers learned that while Marriott was cutting off their paychecks, it had doled out $160 million in dividends to its rich shareholders, a group that includes Sorensen. This is Jim Hightower saying the CEO did say he'll forego some of his $1 million salary this year, but that's disingenuous, since he also gets some $11 million a year in incentive pay and other compensation. And while workers are now consigned to the unemployment line, Sorensen is in line for a 7% pay hike next year and a multi-million-dollar cash bonus.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1619. That was the day that the first ship bearing enslaved people arrived in North America. It was an English warship called the White Lion that came to Johnstown in the colony of Virginia. The ship was a privateer and had captured 20-odd enslaved people from a Portuguese ship in a raid. Virginian planters were interested in forced labor to work the tobacco fields in the colony. The laws surrounding slavery in Virginia evolved over time. Throughout the 1600s, statutes replacing indentured servants to race-based slavery for life were written into the law books. In 1654, John Kaiser became the first person enslaved under the rule of law in North America. By 1662, a law was passed that children would be considered enslaved or free based on the status of their mother in Virginia. This meant that slavery could pass down from generation to generation. This and similar laws ensured slavery would grow. Historians estimate that 388,000 enslaved people came to what became the United States from Africa. Due to laws passing down slavery to children, by the Civil War, there were nearly 4 million enslaved people in the South. By the early 1800s, enslaved people made up about 1/3 of the Southern population. Initially, enslaved labor worked predominantly to produce crops like tobacco, indigo, and also rice. Some West Africans had developed valuable skills in rice cultivation that white landowners exploited through slavery. With the invention of the cotton gin in 1793, cotton became increasingly important to the Southern economy. The South's dependence on slave labor became more entrenched and spread westward with the growing United States until the Civil War ended the brutality of slavery.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River. In the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit, a tad cooler today than yesterday. We're expecting only a high of around 92. We actually went up to almost 100, but only for a brief moment, and then it dropped precipitously about from 100 to 95, so that was pretty good. And we're going to have overnight lows in the low 60s. Winds will be out of the west today and tonight at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunny skies today and sunny skies tomorrow with a high of around 88 to 90 with winds out of the west at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County here in Southern Oregon have now jumped from 512 to 618. Deceased remains numbered at 2, and of course that is an undercount. Grass pollen remains low right outside the window here at the mothership. The air quality index in the region is still good at 30 parts per million, and the daytime UV index in the region remains high at 7. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.98 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 65%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 76 and sunny. Paris is 88 and fair with a heat advisory. Rome is 90 degrees and sunny with a heat advisory. Kyiv is 92 degrees and fair. Kabul is 78 and fair. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 84 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 56 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees and partly cloudy with an air advisory because of dense smoke from wildfires in the area. And New York is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Rafael Cabrera of the AP brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In some of the most explosive accusations in recent Mexican political history, the former head of the state-owned oil company directly accused former President Enrique Peña Nieto and his Treasury Secretary of directing a scheme of kickbacks and embezzlement directly from the president's office. Emilio Lozoya, the former head of Petróleos Mexicanos, who himself faces corruption charges, alleges Peña Nieto and Luis Videgaray used the state-owned Pemex as a conduit to fill promises made during the 2012 campaign, among other allegations he made in a leaked 60-page document whose authenticity was confirmed by Mexican authorities yesterday.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anna Nemstova and Martha Mercer of the Daily Beast brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Vladimir Putin's nemesis, corruption fighter Alexei Navalny, is fighting for his life in a Siberian hospital after being poisoned at an airport while traveling to Moscow. Navalny's closest aide, Kira Yarmish, said Navalny was poisoned after drinking a cup of tea at Tomsk Airport early Thursday morning. That's today. He then boarded a flight to the Russian capital, but fell violently ill en route, taken from the aircraft on a stretcher after it was diverted to the city of Omsk. The opposition leader is in intensive care, relying on a respirator to breathe. And I should add, authorities are preventing him from being able to leave to go to Europe to find experts, because in the town of Omsk, there are no doctors there that have the ability to attack this toxin that he's been poisoned with again. And they are also kept his wife from viewing him and then sent her back that her passport's not enough to view him and visit with him. She needs a marriage certificate to prove that she's married to Alexei Navalny, who she has been married to for over a decade. All right, well, this also comes on the heels of Navalny answering reporters' questions about how the Belarus populist movement against Lukashenko could be replicated in Russia, and for that, Putin has found another convenient way to get rid of an opposition leader. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio's broadcasting on. And we're going to meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.